The officers climbed out of the cruiser, their boots grinding against the gravel as they spread out. One adjusted his belt and shot me a wary look, while the other stood closer to the woman, listening as she launched into her sharp, frantic accusations. "He broke into my property," she cried, gripping the fence like she was the one under attack. We were terrified when he showed up out of nowhere. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but the anger sitting in my chest smothered the urge. This cabin had been mine for years. Every nail driven into the wood, every plank in the walls, every tree I'd planted out front, everything was in my name. And yet here I was, being treated like an intruder on my own land. One of the officers stepped closer. "Sir, we're going to need to see some identification. Please step over here." I could feel the party guests staring, whispers jumping from one to another. A few of them already had their phones raised, recording, waiting for the moment I'd be hauled away. My hand shook slightly as I reached for my wallet, not because I was scared of the police, but because of the humiliation of standing there like a criminal outside my own home. The woman leaned toward the officers, lowering her voice just enough to sound concerned, but still loud enough for me to hear. "I told you he's been lurking around here before. He's dangerous. Please, just get him out of here." That was when my patience finally cracked. I handed my ID to the officer and looked straight at her. "You sure you want them to run my name?" For the first time, she hesitated. Her smug smile flickered. She had no idea who I was or what would come up once they checked. And when they did, everything was about to change. The officer held my license up to the afternoon light, squinting as he read it. His partner typed quickly on the tablet mounted inside the squad car. The woman crossed her arms, a satisfied grin spreading across her face as she whispered to one of the guests, "Finally, this creep is getting hauled off." Seconds dragged by. A few guests chuckled and lifted their drinks again, treating the whole thing like part of the party. My fists clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'd learned a long time ago not to explode too soon. Let people dig their own holes first. Then the officer looked up, confusion crossing his face. He turned the screen toward his partner, and they exchanged a look. "Sir," the taller cop said slowly, "according to our records, you're the registered owner of this cabin." Everything went silent. The laughter died instantly. The woman's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, plastering on a fake smile. "Oh no, that can't be right. You must have the wrong information. I represent the Homeowners Association, and this property falls under our authority." Her words made my blood boil. I didn't have an HOA. I made damn sure of that when I bought this land. I stepped forward, keeping my voice steady, but waited. "There is no HOA here. You forced your way onto my property and threw parties in my house while I was gone." A couple of the guests shifted uneasily. One woman whispered, "Wait, you mean this isn't her place?" The woman's face flushed red, her control slipping. "Don't listen to him," she screamed. "He's dangerous. I saw him snooping around before." The shorter officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, he wasn't snooping. He's the legal owner." And just as her lie started to collapse, another twist hit. The second officer pulled me aside, his voice low but urgent. "Sir, there's something else connected to your name in our system. Something she definitely doesn't know." Her fake confidence cracked again, and this time fear crept into her eyes. I tilted my head slightly. "Something else?" The officer nodded. "Yes, sir. Military service. Special operations. You're listed as decorated." The words hung in the air. The woman's smile vanished completely, her mouth falling open. The guests whispered louder now, some leaning back as if trying to distance themselves from the situation. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The silence spoke for me. The officer raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Ma'am, you said this man was dangerous. You're right, but only to people breaking the law. He's a veteran, and from what we can see, the rightful owner of this property." Her hands trembled against the fence, but she lifted her chin, clinging to the role of victim. "This is insane. He's lying to all of you. He probably faked those records. He's trying to take over this place." That was when I stepped closer, my voice calm but razor sharp. "Take over? This is my land. You're the one throwing parties, drinking my wine, and lying to officers. You invented authority you don't have, and now you're panicking because it's catching up to you. One of the guests, the smug guy who'd been laughing earlier, stood up, his voice shaky. Wait, if this is his place, what are we even doing here? She spun on him. Shut up. Don't listen to him. He's just trying to scare you. She froze mid-sentence when the shorter officer pulled out a small folder. Funny thing, ma'am, he said. We received a call earlier this week about fake HOA notices being taped to doors around here. The description matches you. Care to explain? The color drained from her face. For the first time, she had no answer. The crowd that had been cheering her on now stared at her like she'd been exposed as a criminal in plain sight. She stammered, her hands fluttering uselessly. That's ridiculous. Why would I waste my time doing that? I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. The taller officer crossed his arms. Safe from what? A veteran returning to his own cabin? His words cut straight through her excuses. A few guests started quietly gathering their things, suddenly embarrassed to even be there. I let out a slow breath and reached into my bag. She flinched, thinking I was about to pull something dangerous. Instead, I pulled out a small black hard drive and held it up. You know what this is? Security footage. Every corner of this cabin is wired. I've already seen who unlocked my doors, who poured drinks in my kitchen, who laughed about me never finding out. Gasps rippled through the group. The smug man cursed under his breath and looked away. The woman's face turned chalk white. You're bluffing, she whispered. I smiled coldly. Am I? Because I can play it right here for the officers. And trust me, it's not just you on that footage. It's everyone you invited. The shorter cop stepped closer. His voice was firm now. Sir, if you're willing to turn over that footage, we can verify everything. If what you're saying checks out, this goes beyond a simple dispute. We're talking trespassing, fraud, and possibly impersonating law enforcement. Karen's knees wobbled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to keep herself upright. Desperation flashed across her face, and she made one last attempt to rally the crowd, raising her voice. He's lying. He's twisting everything. You all know me. I run this neighborhood. No one nodded. No one spoke up. The same people who had applauded her earlier now stared at her like she was toxic. That's when I leaned in, my voice low and cutting. You said I don't belong here, but the truth is, you're the intruder. And tonight, everyone sees you for exactly who you are. The taller officer gestured for the hard drive, and I handed it over without hesitation. He passed it to his partner, who plugged it into the squad car system. Within seconds, the screen lit up with clear footage. There she was, unlocking my cabin door with the key that wasn't hers, waving guests inside like it was some exclusive club. Gasps rippled through the group, swelling into outright outrage. One woman covered her mouth. You told us this was your place, she whispered to Karen. You lied. The smug man cursed loudly, jumping to his feet. You dragged me into this? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you just caused? Karen's eyes darted around wildly. She reached for a wine glass, trying to look composed, but her hands shook too much. The glass slipped, shattering against the deck. This proves nothing, she shrieked. That footage could be fake. Then the video switched angles. It showed her taping a bright orange notice onto my front door, carefully signing it with an official-sounding title that didn't exist. The officers paused the frame and zoomed in on her handwriting. The shorter cop turned toward her, his voice icy. Ma'am, this is no longer a neighborhood disagreement. This is forgery and trespassing. And if you've been collecting money or favors under false authority, arrest her. One of the guests snapped, throwing his napkin down. She conned all of us. Karen backed away, shaking her head violently, her voice breaking. No, you can't do this. I was protecting this community. Red and blue lights flashed across her face as the officer stepped forward. For the first time since I'd returned, I felt the balance shift. I crossed my arms and murmured just loud enough for her to hear. Game's over. The officers moved in, radios crackling. One reached for his cuffs, but suddenly Karen bolted toward the dock, her heels clattering against the wood. The guests gasped, some shouting for her to stop. She looked back once, desperation etched across her face, and screamed, You'll regret this. You don't know who I am. I stepped forward, voice steady. We know exactly who you are. The shorter officer caught her halfway down the dock. She struggled briefly, then went limp as the cuffs snapped shut, the metallic click echoing over the water. The guest stood frozen, ashamed. Some already slipping away quietly. Unbelievable, the smug man muttered. She dragged us into this mess. I walked past the broken glass and spilled wine, climbing the steps to my porch. My boots felt heavy not from fear anymore, but from the weight of taking back what was mine. The taller officer turned to me, respectful but firm. Sir, we'll need you to come in tomorrow to give an official statement. But tonight, she's not coming back here. For the first time all evening, I allowed myself a small smile. That's all I wanted. My home back. Karen thrashed once more, shouting. This isn't over. I'll sue him. I'll sue all of you. But her voice cracked beneath the flashing lights, and no one believed her anymore. As the patrol car door slammed shut, I stood on the porch and released a long breath. The cabin was quiet again, except for the gentle lap of the lake against the shore. I watched the crowd disperse and said one final line that carried across the yard. I didn't fight for this country just to be told I can't step foot on my own land. The cruiser rolled away, its lights fading into the trees, leaving behind crickets and the warm glow of my porch lantern. I stood there, absorbing the silence that finally belonged to me again. The table sat abandoned, half-full glasses, broken bottles, and lies scattered across the wood. I stared at it for a moment, letting the anger drain away. One neighbor lingered, stepping closer. Her voice was quiet and sincere. We're sorry. We believed her. She acted like she had all the power. I shook my head. That's what people like her do. They talk loud. They wave fake rules around. They hope no one questions them. But the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be seen. She nodded, shame in her eyes, then disappeared into the night. I pushed open the cabin door. The familiar creak of the hinges greeted me like an old friend. Inside, the air smelled of pine and carried faint echoes of laughter. That didn't belong to me. I set my bag down, ran my hand across the table. I'd built myself and whispered, home. Finally, out on the road, the last echoes of Karen's screams vanished into the dark. She'd played queen for a short time, but tonight her kingdom collapsed. And as I locked the door behind me, I knew this would become a story whispered about for years, how the woman who pretended to rule everything was exposed by the very man she tried to erase. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was clean, precise, and final. And in that quiet cabin by the lake, I smiled, knowing one thing for certain: the land was mine. The truth was mine. And no one, especially a screaming Karen with borrowed power, would ever take it from me again.